My 16-year-old daughter attacked her paralyzed stepfather with a crowbar, and the 911 call changed everything. The detective's voice on my phone was professional, but urgent when he called at 6 a.m. "Mr. Donovan, your daughter Paige attacked her stepfather last night with a crowbar. He's in critical condition at County General. We need you to come to the station immediately." I was out of bed before he finished the sentence, my hands shaking as I pulled on jeans and a shirt. Paige had been living with her mother and stepfather Gregory for the past 3 years since the divorce. I'd fought for joint custody, but lost because the judge believed a teenage girl needed her mother more than her father. Gregory Thorne had been paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident 2 years ago. He used a wheelchair and required constant care that my ex-wife Melissa provided. The idea that Paige would attack a disabled man with a weapon made no sense. She was quiet, artistic, got good grades, never caused trouble. But the detective's words were clear. Critical condition. Crowbar. My daughter. I drove to the police station trying to process what I'd just heard. Paige was 16 years old and weighed maybe 120 pounds. Gregory was a former construction worker, built solid even sitting in that wheelchair. How could she have hurt him badly enough to put him in critical condition? What could possibly have driven her to violence against a man who couldn't even defend himself by standing up? Detective Raymond Wolfe met me in the lobby of the police station. He was in his 40s with gray at his temples and the tired eyes of someone who'd seen too much. "Mr. Donovan, thank you for coming so quickly. Your daughter is being held in juvenile detention. She's been charged with attempted murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon." My legs almost gave out. Attempted murder. My little girl who cried when we had to put our dog down when she was 10, who painted watercolors of sunsets and volunteered at the animal shelter. "Where is she? I need to see her." Detective Wolfe held up his hand. "We need to talk first. I need to understand the family dynamics here because something about this case isn't adding up correctly." He led me to an interview room with gray walls and a metal table. I sat down while he pulled out a folder thick with papers. "Your ex-wife Melissa called 911 at 11:38 last night. She was hysterical, screaming that her daughter had attacked her husband. When officers arrived, they found Gregory Thorne on the floor of his bedroom with severe head trauma. He was barely conscious. Paige was in her room with the crowbar next to her bed. She didn't resist arrest and hasn't said a single word since officers took her into custody." I tried to imagine the scene and couldn't. Did Paige say why she did it? There has to be an explanation. Detective Wolfe leaned back in his chair and studied me. "That's the thing. She hasn't spoken at all. Complete silence. But Gregory Thorne woke up at the hospital around 3 a.m. and gave us his statement. He said Paige has been acting out for months, becoming increasingly violent and unstable. He said she resented him for being disabled and blamed him for her mother's stress. Last night, she came into his bedroom while he was sleeping and attacked him without warning. He tried to defend himself but couldn't because he's paralyzed. He's asking that Paige be charged as an adult and face the maximum sentence." The story sounded wrong. I'd seen Paige just 3 days ago for our weekly dinner. She'd seemed tired, maybe stressed about school, but not violent. Not capable of attempted murder. "Can I see the 911 call transcript?" Detective Wolfe hesitated, then slid a paper across the table. "This is where things get interesting. Melissa made the call, but there's something on the recording that didn't make it into the official transcript. Something that makes me want to dig deeper before we move forward with prosecution." He pulled out a digital recorder and pressed play. Melissa's voice came through shrill and panicked. "My daughter attacked my husband. She hit him with a crowbar. He's bleeding. Oh God, there's so much blood. Send someone now." The dispatcher's calm voice asked for the address and details. Then in the background, barely audible, another voice. Male. Angry. "Tell them she's crazy. Tell them she attacked me for no reason. Say she's been violent before." I sat forward. "That's Gregory. He's coaching her on what to say?" Detective Wolfe nodded slowly. The dispatcher caught it too. "That's why I'm talking to you before moving forward. A paralyzed man who just suffered severe head trauma shouldn't be conscious enough to coach anyone on their 911 call, let alone sound that coherent and angry. So I started looking into Gregory Thorne's background more carefully. He opened the folder and spread out documents. Medical records, police reports, employment files. Gregory Thorne claimed he was paralyzed in a car accident 2 years ago. Single vehicle collision, hit a tree, suffered spinal damage. He collected a $300,000 insurance settlement for permanent disability. But here's what's interesting. His medical records show he went through 6 months of intensive physical therapy after the accident. His doctors noted significant improvement and eventual full recovery of motor function. But Gregory never reported that recovery to his insurance company or disability services. He continued collecting benefits while claiming total paralysis from the waist down. I stared at the medical records. He's faking being paralyzed? Detective Wolf pulled out more papers, or at least exaggerating the extent of his disability. His last medical evaluation was 18 months ago, and the doctor noted he could stand with assistance and had regained most sensation in his legs. But at home, he's completely wheelchair-bound according to your ex-wife and everyone who knows him. He hasn't worked in 2 years despite being physically capable. The implications made my stomach turn. If he can walk, why would he keep pretending? Detective Wolf's expression darkened. That's exactly what I want to find out. Because a man who's been lying about paralysis for 2 years to collect insurance money is someone who might lie about other things too. I want to hear what Paige has to say, but she won't talk to me. She will talk to you? I stood up immediately. Take me to her, right now. The Juvenile Detention Center was attached to the police station through a secure hallway. Detective Wolf walked me through 2 security checkpoints until we reached a small room with plastic chairs and a table. Paige sat on one side wearing an orange jumpsuit that was too big for her. Her face was pale and her eyes were red from crying. When she saw me, she started sobbing. I crossed the room and pulled her into a hug while she shook against my chest. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I tried to tell people, but nobody would listen. I'm so scared. I held her until the crying slowed. Then I sat across from her and took her hands. Paige, I need you to tell me everything. Detective Wolf is on your side. But he needs to understand what really happened. Start from the beginning and don't leave anything out. Paige looked at the detective, then back at me. She took a shaky breath. Gregory isn't paralyzed, he can walk. I've seen him. The words hung in the air. Detective Wolf pulled out his notebook. When did you first see him walking? Paige wiped her eyes. About 6 months ago. I came home early from school because I had a headache. I walked in through the front door and heard someone upstairs. I thought it was Mom, but she was at work. I went upstairs and saw Gregory walking out of their bedroom. Actually walking, not using his wheelchair or anything. He was carrying a box of Mom's jewelry. When he saw me, he dropped the box and fell to the floor. He told me if I ever told anyone what I saw, he'd make sure I regretted it. He said nobody would believe me anyway because I was just a kid and he was disabled. Then he made me help him back to his wheelchair. I felt rage building in my chest. You never told your mother? Paige started crying again. I tried. That same night at dinner, I told Mom I saw Gregory walking. She got so angry at me. She said I was being cruel and making up stories about a disabled man who couldn't defend himself. Gregory just sat there looking sad and disappointed. He said sometimes young people have trouble accepting step-parents and make up hurtful lies. Mom grounded me for 2 weeks for being so mean. After that, I didn't know what to do. If my own mother wouldn't believe me, who would? Detective Wolf leaned forward. Tell me about last night. What led to you hitting Gregory with the crowbar? Paige's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He's been getting worse. Once he knew I'd seen him walking, he started threatening me all the time. He'd wait until Mom left for work and then stand up out of his wheelchair and follow me around the house. He'd back me into corners and tell me how easy it would be to hurt me and claim I'd attacked him first. Everyone would believe the paralyzed man over the troubled teenage stepdaughter. He'd push me, grab my arms hard enough to leave bruises, but only where my clothes would cover them. I started staying at friends' houses as much as I could, or spending all my time in my room with the door locked. She pulled up her sleeves. Purple and yellow bruises covered both forearms in the shape of fingerprints. Last night, Mom was working late at the hospital. Gregory came to my room around 11. He opened my door even though I'd locked it. He had a key I didn't know about. He stood there in the doorway, not in his wheelchair, just standing on his own legs. He said he was tired of me being in his house. He said he was going to teach me a lesson about respect. Then he started walking toward my bed. Paige was shaking now. I grabbed the crowbar I'd been keeping under my bed. I bought it a week ago because I was so scared of him. When he got close, I swung it at his head. I didn't mean to hit him that hard. I just wanted him to stop. He fell and hit the floor, and there was blood everywhere. I panicked and ran back to my room. Detective Wolf wrote everything down. What happened after he fell? Paige looked at her hands. I heard him get up. He was groaning and cursing. Then I heard him drag himself to his wheelchair and heard the wheels in the hallway. He went to his bedroom and I heard him call for Mom even though she wasn't home. About 20 minutes later, Mom came home. I heard her screaming. Then the police came. I wanted to put my fist through the wall. My daughter had been living in fear for 6 months while her stepfather terrorized her, and everyone believed his lies because he was disabled. We need to prove he can walk. Medical records alone won't be enough to show he was threatening her last night. Detective Wolf stood up. I've already got officers at your ex-wife's house processing the scene. If Gregory can walk, there might be evidence. Meanwhile, I'm going to talk to Gregory's doctors and get his most recent medical assessments. Paige, is there anyone else who might have seen Gregory walking? Anyone at all? Paige thought for a moment. His physical therapist came to the house for a while after the accident. Linda something. She stopped coming about a year ago. She and Gregory had an argument one day. I heard her tell him he was recovered enough that he didn't need therapy anymore. He told her to get out and never come back. She seemed upset about something, but I don't know what. Detective Wolf added the name to his notes. I'll find her. Paige, I'm going to recommend you be released to your father's custody while we investigate. You're not a flight risk, and given what you've told me, I don't think keeping you here serves justice. Relief washed over me. Thank you. Detective Wolf's expression was grim. Don't thank me yet. We need to prove your daughter's story. Right now, it's her word against a man lying in a hospital bed with a fractured skull. Even if we prove he can walk, that doesn't necessarily justify hitting him with a crowbar. We need to show she was defending herself from an imminent threat. That's going to be difficult. He walked us through the process of temporary release. I signed paperwork, posted bond, and an hour later, Paige was sitting in my car wearing clothes I'd brought from home. She stared out the window silently as I drove. When we got to my apartment, she went straight to the guest room and closed the door. I called my lawyer, Anthony Blackwell, and explained the situation. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. This is going to be a battle, even if we prove Gregory faked his paralysis. The prosecution will argue Paige should have called police instead of attacking him. They'll say she had time to leave the house or barricade herself in her room. We need evidence that she was in immediate danger with no other options. I spent the rest of that day calling everyone I could think of who knew Gregory. His former co-workers, neighbors, family members. Most people defended him, said he was a good man dealt a terrible hand by his disability. But one former co-worker, Dennis Kumar, had a different story. Gregory and I worked construction together for 10 years. After his accident, I visited him in the hospital. The doctors told me he'd walk again with therapy. Then he got that huge insurance settlement, and suddenly his prognosis got way worse. I thought it was odd, but I figured maybe the doctors had been too optimistic. But then about a year ago, I ran into him at a hardware store. He was walking through the aisles, no wheelchair, no visible problems. When he saw me, he dropped to the ground and started yelling that his legs had given out. Made a huge scene until store employees helped him to a wheelchair they kept for customers. After that, he stopped returning my calls. I tried to tell his wife what I saw, but she said I was jealous of his settlement money. Maybe I should have pushed harder. I thanked Dennis and immediately called Detective Wolf with the information. He said he'd interview Dennis and add his statement to the case file. Meanwhile, Melissa had been calling my phone nonstop. I finally answered. Her voice was shrill with rage. You got her out of jail? She tried to murder my husband, and you got her out? What kind of father are you? I kept my voice level. The kind who believes his daughter when she says she was defending herself from a man who's been abusing her for months. Gregory can walk, Melissa. He's been faking his paralysis and terrorizing Paige. Melissa screamed into the phone. You're insane. Gregory is paralyzed. I take care of him every single day. I see him struggle. How dare you make up lies to defend what she did? I heard Gregory's voice in the background. Is that her father? Tell him he's going to pay for what his daughter did to me. I'm going to own everything he has. I hung up. 2 days later, Detective Wolf called with an update. I found Gregory's physical therapist, Linda Martinez. She was very interested to talk once I explained the situation. She said Gregory made a full recovery 18 months ago. She documented everything and told him he was ready to return to work. He begged her to falsify records, saying he was still paralyzed because he needed the disability payments. When she refused, he threatened to file complaints against her license. She was so shaken she quit working with him entirely. She still has all her original notes showing his complete recovery. I felt a surge of hope. That's perfect. That proves he's been faking. Detective Wolf's tone was cautious. It proves he lied about his disability, but we still need to prove he threatened Paige last night. That's where the case gets tricky. 3 days after Paige's arrest, I took her to a therapist who specialized in trauma. Dr. Claire Yates was recommended by my lawyer as someone who could evaluate whether Paige had been living in a state of fear that would justify her actions. Paige sat in Dr. Yates's office and told her everything. The 6 months of threats, the bruises, the fear of sleeping in her own home, the feeling that nobody would believe her because Gregory's disability made him automatically trustworthy. Dr. Yates listened carefully and took detailed notes. After the session, she pulled me aside. Your daughter has been living in a prolonged state of terror. She exhibits classic symptoms of abuse trauma. The hypervigilance, the sleeping difficulties, the isolation from support systems. In my professional opinion, she genuinely believed she was in imminent danger the night she defended herself. A reasonable person in her situation, after 6 months of escalating threats from someone who everyone believed was helpless, would have felt they had no options left. I asked if she'd testify. Dr. Yates agreed immediately. 1 week after the incident, Detective Wolf called with news that changed everything. We've been going through Gregory's computer and financial records with a warrant. You're not going to believe what we found. He came to my apartment that evening with a thick file. Paige sat next to me on the couch while he spread out documents across my coffee table. Gregory Thorne wasn't just faking paralysis to collect disability payments. He's been running an elaborate insurance fraud scheme for 2 years. After his legitimate accident, he realized he could milk it for everything it was worth. He's collected $300,000 from his accident settlement, another $150,000 in ongoing disability payments, and various benefits from victim compensation funds. But it gets worse. We found evidence that he's been planning to escalate his fraudulent claims. He was researching how to fake additional injuries that would increase his settlement amounts. And here's the really disturbing part. Detective Wolf pulled out printed emails. We found correspondence between Gregory and a lawyer about filing a lawsuit against your ex-wife's employer. He was planning to claim that Melissa injured him through neglect while providing his care. He was going to accuse her of dropping him, causing him to sustain new injuries that required additional compensation. The lawsuit was drafted and ready to file next month. He was going to destroy Melissa's career and reputation while collecting even more money. I felt sick. He was going to frame his own wife for hurting him? Detective Wolf nodded grimly. And there's more. We found journal entries on his computer. He wrote extensively about Paige, about how she was a problem that needed to be eliminated from the household. He wrote about finding ways to get her removed, either through making her look unstable or through more direct means. His final entry from the night Paige hit him says he was going to provoke her into attacking him, then use that attack to have her arrested and removed from the home permanently. He wrote that once Paige was gone, he'd have complete control over Melissa and all her assets. The pieces came together with horrifying clarity. He went to Paige's room on purpose. He wanted her to attack him. Detective Wolf pulled out one more document. We also found something else. Gregory has been stealing from Melissa. He had access to her bank accounts and has been slowly draining her savings. She had $80,000 saved before she married him. She now has $12,000. He's been transferring small amounts into hidden accounts for 2 years. We estimate he's stolen over $65,000 from her. Paige spoke quietly. Mom's been working extra shifts at the hospital. She's always stressed about money. She said she didn't understand where everything was going. Gregory told her she was spending too much on me. I looked at my daughter and saw how thin she'd become, how tired she looked. She'd been living with a predator who was systematically destroying her family while everyone sympathized with him because of his supposed disability. Detective Wolf gathered the documents. I'm recommending all charges against Paige be dropped. This was legitimate self-defense against a credible threat. Gregory Thorne, on the other hand, is going to face charges for insurance fraud, theft, domestic abuse, and attempted fraud. The district attorney is very interested in this case. I felt relief flood through me. What about Melissa? Is she going to face charges for the 911 call? Detective Wolf shook his head. Your ex-wife appears to be a victim here too. She genuinely believed Gregory was paralyzed and that Paige attacked him without cause. She was manipulated just as thoroughly as everyone else. Though she's going to have to answer some hard questions about why she didn't take her daughter's accusations more seriously. 2 weeks after Paige's arrest, I sat in a courtroom while a judge reviewed all the evidence. Gregory sat in a wheelchair on the other side of the room, his head still bandaged, playing the victim perfectly, until the prosecutor asked him to stand. Gregory looked confused. I can't stand. I'm paralyzed. The prosecutor held up medical records. According to your own physical therapist's notes and multiple medical evaluations, you made a full recovery 18 months ago. Stand up, Mr. Thorne. Gregory refused. The judge ordered him to comply or be held in contempt. Gregory had no choice. Slowly, with obvious reluctance, he stood up from his wheelchair. The courtroom erupted. Melissa gasped from her seat behind him. Gregory tried to claim his legs were weak, that he could barely stand, but it was too late. The prosecutor played the 911 call where Gregory's voice came through clear and strong, coaching Melissa on what to say seconds after supposedly suffering severe head trauma. Then they played testimony from Dennis Kumar, who'd seen Gregory walking in the hardware store. Then Linda Martinez confirmed Gregory had full mobility 18 months ago. The judge's face was stone as she listened to everything. When the evidence concluded, she made her ruling. All charges against Paige were dismissed. She was a victim defending herself against an abuser. Gregory was arrested in the courtroom and charged with multiple felonies. His bail was set at $500,000, which he couldn't pay because all his fraudulent assets had been frozen. Melissa came over to me after the hearing ended. Her face was gray, her eyes hollow. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. He told me Paige was lying. I thought I was protecting him. I thought I was being a good wife by standing by my disabled husband. Instead, I failed my daughter for 2 years. I didn't have words that would help her. She'd chosen Gregory over Paige repeatedly. She'd dismissed every warning sign because it was easier to believe her husband was helpless than to face the truth that he was a predator. The damage she'd done to Paige by refusing to believe her couldn't be undone by apologies now. Melissa looked at Paige. I'm so sorry. I should have listened. I should have protected you. Paige stared at her mother. You should have believed me the first time I told you something was wrong. You chose him over me every single time. You let him hurt me because believing him was easier than facing the truth. Melissa started crying, but Paige turned away. Some wounds take more than sorry to heal. Gregory's trial happened 4 months later. He was convicted on all charges including insurance fraud, theft, domestic abuse, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison and ordered him to pay full restitution of all the money he'd stolen and fraudulently collected. Linda Martinez testified about how he'd threatened her license when she refused to falsify records. Dennis Kumar described seeing Gregory walking in the hardware store and watching him fake a collapse. Paige testified about 6 months of terror living with a man who pretended to be helpless while threatening her when they were alone. The evidence was overwhelming, and Gregory's lawyer couldn't create any reasonable defense. Melissa attended every day of the trial, sitting in the back of the courtroom watching the man she'd married get exposed as a fraud and an abuser. She filed for divorce before the verdict was even announced. After the trial, Paige moved in with me permanently. She started therapy twice a week to process the trauma of what she'd endured. We talked about pressing charges against Melissa for neglect, but Paige didn't want to. She said her mother had been manipulated too, and that destroying her completely wouldn't help anyone heal. It took a year before Paige was willing to see Melissa again. They met for coffee at a neutral location with me sitting at a nearby table in case Paige needed support. Melissa had been attending therapy too, working through how she'd failed to protect her daughter and why she'd been so ready to believe Gregory's lies over Paige's truth. The conversation was awkward and painful. Melissa apologized again, but without excuses this time. She acknowledged she'd chosen wrong repeatedly and that Paige had every right to hate her. Paige listened and said she didn't hate her mom, but she wasn't ready to forgive yet either. Maybe someday, but not now. They started meeting once a month, slowly rebuilding something that might eventually resemble a relationship again. Dennis Kumar became an important witness in several other cases after news of Gregory's fraud went public. 2 other people came forward with stories about Gregory faking injuries or exaggerating disability for financial gain. Investigations revealed he'd been running smaller insurance scams for years before his car accident gave him the opportunity to commit fraud on a massive scale. Linda Martinez won a case against the licensing board when they tried to investigate her for her role in Gregory's fraud. She proved she'd documented everything correctly and had refused to participate in his scheme, even at risk to her career. She continued working as a physical therapist and became an advocate for reporting suspected insurance fraud in medical settings. Paige graduated high school with honors 2 years after the incident. She gave a speech at graduation about believing survivors even when the truth seems impossible. About how abuse doesn't always look obvious and how predators often use our sympathy against us. She talked about the courage it takes to defend yourself when everyone says you're wrong. She thanked me for believing her when nobody else would. Gregory's appeals were all denied, and he's still serving his sentence. He'll be eligible for parole in 8 years, but victims' rights groups plan to oppose his release. Melissa eventually rebuilt her savings and her career, though she carries the guilt of failing Paige during those crucial months. She and Paige have a relationship now, careful and boundaried, but present. 3 years after that night, Paige sits at my kitchen table studying for her college midterms. She's majoring in criminal justice with plans to work in victim advocacy. She wants to help other people who defend themselves against abusers and get blamed for it. She's recovered her art practice too, painting landscapes that she sells at local galleries. The crowbar that saved her life that night is stored as evidence somewhere in a police warehouse, cataloged and filed away. But Paige doesn't need it anymore, because she's safe now, and she knows people believe her when she says something's wrong. That 911 call did change everything, just not the way anyone expected. The truth has a way of finding its way to the surface eventually, if someone's brave enough to make people listen. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.